I kept my head down on the ninth floor, typing, fixing, surviving. "Morning," Ethan whispered, dropping into the chair beside me. "You look tired, man," I said. "Rent doesn't care about sleep." He laughed softly. "Laura's in early. Bad sign." My stomach tightened. Laura Bennett ruled our office with silence. When she spoke, keyboard stopped. "Report," she said from my desk. I stood. "It's finished, Miss Bennett." She scanned it. "Late by 3 minutes," I said. "The server," she cut in. "Excuses don't age well." She walked away. Ethan mouthed, "Sorry." At lunch, Maya slid into the seat across from me. "You okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "I'm used to it." She leaned closer. "She doesn't play favorites, and when she does, people get burned," I said. "I'm not special," Maya replied. "That's what scares me." I needed this job. After my last breakup, everything felt unstable. Bills stacked. Friends faded. I told myself rules meant safety. Laura never bent them, especially not for me. That made me trust her. That afternoon, Ethan muttered, "She hates everyone equally." I said, "At least that's fair." He grinned. "Fair gets you paid." Near 6, Laura called. "My office." I stepped in. She closed the door. "Sit." I did. She said, "Your work is solid." My heart jumped. "Thank you." She added, "You don't complain." I said, "I can handle pressure." She studied me. Most can't. She paused, then said, "I'm getting a drink after work. For business." I blinked. "With me?" She nodded. "If you want." My mind raced. Ethan's warning. Maya's look. I said, "Is that appropriate?" She replied, "It's optional." Her eyes softened. "You've earned it." I stood there, confused, flattered, afraid. I said, "Okay." She smiled, small and sharp. 7. As I left, Maya caught my arm. "What did she want?" I said, "A work drink." Her face fell. "Be careful," Ethan whispered. "Dude?" I forced a grin. "Just one." At 7, I followed Laura out, telling myself rules still mattered. I didn't know this was the first one she'd break, or the last one I should have believed in. Outside, Ethan said, "You sure?" I said, "It's work." He said, "Work doesn't smile like that." Maya added, "Promise you'll leave early." I said, "I promise." Laura waited by the elevator. "Ready?" she asked. I said, "Yes, ma'am." She corrected me. "Laura, after hours." I nodded. In the elevator, she said, "You're tense." I said, "I don't mix things." She said, "Neither do I." Silence hummed. She added, "I notice effort." I asked, "Why me?" She said, "Because you listen." I swallowed. At the bar downstairs, she said, "One drink." I said, "One." She ordered, "Whiskey." I said, "Beer." She smiled. "Cautious." I replied, "Careful." She raised her glass. "To rules." I tapped mine. "To work." Minutes passed. She asked, "What do you want?" I said, "Stability." She said, "Ambitious." I said, "Survival." She leaned closer. "You'll go far." I laughed nervously. "I just want to keep this job." She said, "Then trust me." I believed her. I told myself this was normal. I ignored the knot in my chest. I finished my drink. She said, "Another?" I hesitated. She said, "Optional." I said, "Okay." The night opened its door. Laura said, "Relax." I said, "I am." She said, "Good." I checked my phone. Maya texted, "Home safe?" I typed, "Soon." Laura noticed. "Someone worried?" I said, "A friend." She said, "Friends mean limits." I nodded. She smiled again. "Finish up." I said, "Yes." She stood. "Tomorrow, 9 sharp." I said, "I'll be ready." She added, "Don't overthink tonight." I didn't answer. I followed her out, carrying hope like a fragile file, already marked confidential. I told myself rules protected me, but as the doors closed, I felt the job watching, silent, patient, waiting to collect interest on a promise I never meant to make that night alone here. I went back the next night. "Just one," I told myself. Laura said, "You always say that." I smiled. "Work habit." She laughed, warm, easy. "Relax," I said. "I'm trying." She asked, "Rough day?" I said, "Aren't they all?" She touched my arm. "You did well." I felt seen. One drink became 2. "Tell me about you," she said. I said, "There's not much." She said, "I doubt that." I told her about my breakup. "I wasn't enough," I said. She replied, "You stayed too long." I asked, "How do you know?" She said, "I can tell." Her voice softened. We talked every night that week. "You're different after hours," I said. She smiled. "I don't wear armor here," I said. "At work, you scare people." She said, "I need control." I said, "Here?" She answered, "Here, I breathe." I liked being air. She listened. What are you afraid of? She asked. I said, failing again. She said, you won't. I asked, promise? She said, I don't promise lightly. Her knee brushed mine. I didn't move. She didn't either. Ethan stopped joining me at lunch. Busy, he said. I asked, you mad? He said, careful. I said, it's nothing. He shook his head. Nothing turns into something. I laughed it off. Maya didn't. This is wrong, she said. I replied, it's just drinks. She said, power isn't just rules. I said, she respects me. Maya sighed. That's how it starts. Laura texted late. Up? I replied, always. She wrote, come by. I hesitated. I went. You came? She said. I answered. You asked. She poured wine. Sit. I sat. She said, you're quiet. I said, thinking. She said, about me? I said, about lines. She smiled. Lines move. She leaned closer. Do you trust me? She asked. I said, I want to. She said, good. Her hand rested on mine. I felt heat. This is wrong, I whispered. She replied, then say stop. I didn't. She said, you choose. I chose silence. We talked about childhood, pressure, loneliness. I hate being alone, she said. I said, me too. She said, stay. I stayed. Nothing happened, but everything changed. The next morning at work, she was cold again. Deadline, she snapped. I nodded. My heart raced. Nights blurred, laughing, touches, secrets. You're special, she said. I said, you shouldn't say that. She replied, I mean it. I believed her. Ethan stopped texting. Maya said, please stop. I said, I can handle it. She said, you're falling. I was. One night, Laura said, I'll take care of you at work. I asked, what does that mean? She smiled. Trust me. I felt safe. I felt chosen. I didn't see the edge. Laura texted me at 9. Come over, she wrote. I stared at my phone. I typed, are you sure? She replied, stop overthinking. I said, okay. My hands shook as I drove. I told myself this was love. I told myself I mattered. Her door was unlocked. Laura? I called. Kitchen, she said. I stepped inside. Candles were lit. Music played low. She smiled. You look nervous. I said, I care. She said, I know. I moved closer. I've never done this, I said. She answered, neither have I. I believed her. A voice came from the hallway. Who's this? My heart stopped. A tall man walked out. Laura stiffened. Mark, she said. He looked at me. You must be the employee. I said, employee? Laura stepped back. You weren't supposed to come early, I whispered. What is this? She crossed her arms. You misunderstood. Mark laughed. Did you think you were special? I said. She told me. Laura snapped. I told you nothing. My chest burned. You invited me, she said, for a drink. Mark said, you crossed a line. I said, I was invited here. He stepped closer. You're replaceable. I looked at Laura. Tell him, I said. She looked away. You got attached, she said. That's not my fault, I said. You held my hand. She replied, you held it back. Mark smiled. Desperate men imagine things. I felt small. I felt stupid. Mark said, do you know who I am? I shook my head. Laura said, he's senior leadership. Mark added, and I decide careers. I said, I didn't know. He said, ignorance won't save you. Laura sighed. This is why rules exist. I said, you broke them. She replied, you begged for attention. My voice cracked. I trusted you. She said, that was your mistake. Mark poured a drink. You'll forget tonight, he said, or you'll regret tomorrow. I asked, is this a threat? He smiled. It's advice. Laura said, you should leave. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Was any of it real? She looked bored. You were convenient. Mark laughed softly. Lesson learned. I felt heat behind my eyes. You used me, she said. You wanted to be used. That broke me. At work the next morning, Laura didn't look at me. Report, she said coldly. I handed it over. She said, late by 2 minutes. I whispered, about last night. She cut me off. We don't discuss personal matters. I said, you invited me. She said, act professional. Mark passed by. He stopped. Morning, he said. Good to see you working. I nodded. He leaned close. Careful choices make long careers. He walked away. Laura said, focus. I stared at my screen, hands numb. Ethan asked, you okay? I said, fine. Maya whispered, you look sick. I said, I am. Laura called from her office. I expect excellence. I realized something had snapped. Love wasn't real. Safety wasn't real. I had walked into a trap and smiled while it closed around me. Monday felt louder. You're late, Laura said, not looking up. I said, I'm on time. She replied, check the clock. I checked. 1 minute passed. She said, noted. I sat, heat crawling up my neck. Whispers followed me. That's him, someone said. Another voice answered, I heard he tried something. I turned. Silence. Ethan didn't sit near me anymore. I asked, did I do something? He said, I can't talk. I said, we're friends. He looked away. I need this job. Laura called me out in meetings. Explain this error, she said. I said, that wasn't mine. She replied, you're responsible. Mark joined once. Problems again? He asked. I said, I can fix it. He smiled. Can you? The room watched. I felt judged. Maya found me by the printer. I believe you, she whispered. I said, that doesn't help. She said, you're not crazy. I laughed bitterly. Feels like I am, she said. They're pushing you. I asked, why? She answered, because they can. Emails vanished. Deadlines changed. You missed this, Laura said. I replied, I never got it. She said, excuses. Mark forwarded a chain. See? He said. I said, that wasn't sent. He shrugged. Prove it. I couldn't. Ethan texted once. Lay low. I typed. They're lying. He didn't reply. At lunch, chairs stayed empty around me. Someone said, management's watching. I said, let them. My hands shook. Laura called me in. Your performance is slipping, she said. I asked, since when? She said, since distractions. I said, you mean rumors? She leaned forward. You created those. I said, you know that's not true. She replied, careful. I asked, is this punishment? She said, this is work. Mark stopped by my desk. Still here? He asked. I said, for now. He said, smart men know when to leave. I asked, is that advice? He smiled. It's reality. I watched him walk away, heart pounding. Maya slid a coffee to me. Don't quit, she said. I replied, I'm tired. She said, that's what they want. I asked, what if I can't win? She said, survive. I nodded, barely. Laura returned a file. Redo it, she said. I asked, why? She said, because I said so. I said, this isn't fair. She replied, fair isn't my job. I felt anger spark. Then what is? She stared. Control. That word stuck. Control. I replayed everything. The drinks, the smiles, the switch. They planned this, I whispered. Maya heard. Yes, she said. They didn't expect you to last. I felt shame crack into rage. I opened my notebook. I'm not quitting, I said. Maya smiled faintly. Good, Laura called out. Focus. I typed harder. Mark watched from the glass office. I met his eyes and didn't look away. For the first time, fear wasn't winning. I was still standing. I stopped apologizing. When Laura said, fix this, I said, show me the error. She frowned. Just do it. I replied, I need details. She said, watch your tone. I answered, I am. My hands were steady. Inside, something had shifted. I opened a folder on my laptop. Emails, I whispered. I saved everything. Dates, times, changes. I recorded meetings. When Mark said, you missed this, I asked, can you resend? He smiled. Already did. I said, please forward again. He didn't. I wrote it down. Maya sat beside me after hours. You're different, she said. I replied, I'm done begging. She nodded. She showed me backups. I'll help. They edit trails, she whispered. I said, I know. She asked, what's your plan? I said, truth. She squeezed my hand. Quiet truth works. I called Daniel Carter that night. It's been years, he said. I replied, I'm in trouble. He said, tell me. I did. He listened. Don't rush, he said. I asked, should I expose them? He answered, do you want justice or noise? I said, I want my life back. He said, then document. Let them trip. At work, Ethan finally spoke. I should have warned you, he said. I asked, warn me about what? He swallowed. Laura, this isn't new. I stared. You knew? He nodded. I was scared. I said, you let it happen. He said, I'm sorry. It hurt, then it freed me. I said, I don't need you to save me. He whispered, what can I do? I replied, tell the truth when asked. Laura noticed my calm. You're quiet, she said. I answered, focused. She said, good. Mark watched from his office. I met his stare. He looked away first. I smiled. I asked Daniel again, what if they crush me? He said, they're already trying. I said, I'm tired. He said, rest comes after resolve. I breathed. Maya slipped me a note. Audit rumors, it read. I looked up. She nodded. Be ready. I said, I am. Laura snapped. Deadline moved. I replied, please confirm by email. She paused. Do it. She sent it. I saved it. That night, I replayed voices. Desperate, Laura had said. I said out loud, no. I looked at my folder. You won't break me, I whispered. I typed a timeline. I listened to recordings. Calm replaced rage. Ethan messaged. If they ask, I'll talk. I replied, that's enough. Maya texted, proud of you. I wrote back, thank you. Daniel called. Any urge for revenge? I said, sometimes. He replied, let karma work. I asked, what if it's slow? He said, truth is patient. I believed him. The next morning, Laura said, meeting at 10. I said, I'll be there. Mark smirked. I smiled back. I wasn't hunting them. I was building a mirror. When it turned, they would see themselves. The email hit at 9. Compliance audit scheduled, it said. I read it twice. Laura read it 3 times. Who asked for this? She snapped. I said, no idea. Mark stormed past my desk. What did you do? He hissed. I replied, I worked. Meetings filled the day. We need records, Laura said. I asked, which ones? She said, all. Her voice shook. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. Stop staring, she said. I replied, I'm listening. She swallowed. Mark called me in. You're being reviewed, he said. I answered, so is everyone. He leaned forward. Careers end here, I said. Truth doesn't. He laughed, but it cracked. You think you're safe? I said. I think I'm honest. He stood abruptly. Get out. Maya whispered, it's happening. I said, I know. She asked, how do you feel? I said, heavy. She nodded. Me too. Ethan hovered nearby. They're asking questions, he said. I replied, answer them. He exhaled. I will. Laura stopped me by the copier. Did you talk? She asked. I said, when asked. She said, about what? I answered, my work. She leaned close. Don't be clever. I said, I'm being clear. Her eyes darted. You're enjoying this. I said, I'm surviving. She called me later. Close the door. I did. This audit is disruptive, she said. I replied, audits are routine. She said, not like this. I asked, why not? She snapped, don't pretend. I said, I'm not pretending anymore. Silence fell. Mark shouted down the hall. Where's the file? I answered. Which one? He barked. All of them. I said, check the server. He slammed his door. Laura watched me from glass. I met her eyes. She looked away. An auditor asked me, any concerns? I said, I keep records. He nodded. Good. Laura interrupted. We're done here. The auditor said, not yet. Her face drained. I felt the sting of sadness. I remembered her laugh. I remembered believing. At lunch, Ethan said, Mark's sweating. I replied, heat finds lies. He asked, you okay? I said, I'm conflicted. He said, why? I answered, I once cared. He nodded. Caring doesn't protect you. Laura approached my desk. We need to talk, she said. I replied, schedule it. She blinked. Now, I said. Send an invite, she whispered. Please. I paused. Later. She stepped back, shaken. Mark was escorted into a room. This is nonsense, he yelled. An auditor said, Sir. Mark pointed at me. He's the problem. I said, I'm here. The auditor said, We'll decide. Mark's voice cracked. You don't understand. I did. Laura sat alone. You did this, she said softly. I replied, I didn't lie. She said, You loved me. I said, I loved an idea. Tears pooled. Help me, she whispered. I said, I can't. An announcement followed. Formal investigation initiated, the auditor said. Mark went pale. Laura closed her eyes. I felt no joy, only release. Karma wasn't loud. It whispered, and they finally heard it. Everyone was there. We'll begin, the auditor said. I sat straight. Laura said, This is harassment. I said, It's review. Emails appeared on the screen. That one is mine, I said. Mark said, Out of context. The auditor asked, Which context? Silence answered. Maya spoke. I saw edits, she said. Ethan added, I was warned to stay quiet. Laura snapped. You're lying. I said, They're telling the truth. Laura pointed at me. He planned this. I replied, I documented facts. Mark stood. This is a setup. The auditor said, Sit. Messages scrolled. After hours, the auditor read. Laura said, Personal. I said, Power isn't personal. She glared. You seduced me. I shook my head. You invited me. Mark laughed, thin. Irrelevant. The auditor said, Relevant. Laura turned to me. Why didn't you stop? She asked. I answered, I tried. She said, You enjoyed it. I said, I was confused. She scoffed. Weak. I replied, Human. The room breathed. Mark argued, He's incompetent. I said, Check my reviews. The auditor nodded. Consistent. Laura whispered, Say something. I said, I am. She said, You're ruining me. I answered, I'm telling what happened. She broke. I needed control, she cried. People listen to power. I said, You used it. She sobbed. I didn't think you'd stay. I replied, I survived. Mark cursed. This is absurd. The auditor said, Enough. Security arrived. Mr. Reynolds, they said. Mark shouted, You'll regret this. I said, I already did. He was let out. The door closed. Laura sank into her chair. I'm sorry, she said. I replied, I believe you. She looked up. Then help me. I said, I can't. Tears fell. I was lonely. I said, so was I. The auditor turned to me. You're cleared. I nodded. Thank you. Applause didn't come. I felt empty. Ethan whispered, You won. I said, No. Maya squeezed my hand. You're free. I breathed. Outside, Laura said, Do you hate me? I answered, I don't know. She said, I deserve this. I replied, Consequences happen. She nodded. Goodbye. I said, Goodbye. I walked away tired. Revenge had arrived, quiet and complete. It didn't heal me. It showed me what healing was not. I sat again. Is there more? I asked. The auditor said, One question. Mark's email appeared. This message, he said. Laura whispered. I wrote it. Gasps followed. I said, That's the truth. Laura nodded. I manipulated outcomes. I said, You harmed people. She said, I know. The auditor typed. Record updated. Ethan spoke again. I was afraid, he said. I replied, Fear spreads damage. He nodded. I'll testify. I said, Thank you. Maya added, I saved copies. The auditor smiled. Helpful. Laura covered her face. I ruined lives. I said, You can stop now. She said, I don't know how. I answered, By telling everything. The room shifted. Break, the auditor said. I stepped outside. Laura followed. Why didn't you fight back? She asked. I said, I froze. She said, I relied on that. I said, I grew. She whispered, I misjudged you. I replied, You misused me. She nodded slowly. Inside, voices resumed. Decision reached, the auditor said. I listened. Termination effective immediately. A chair scraped. Mark yelled, Appeal. The auditor replied, Denied. I exhaled. Laura stared at the floor. It's over, she said. I answered, for us. She whispered, I never meant to hurt you. I said, intent doesn't erase damage. Afterward, Maya said, you did right. I said, it doesn't feel right. She replied, justice rarely does. Ethan added, you're stronger. I said, I'm tired. The auditor approached. Take care, he said. I nodded. I will. I sat alone briefly. Was it worth it? I asked myself. I remembered nights, promises, fear. I said aloud, I chose truth. My chest ached. I stood, steady. Go home, I told myself. I left the room quieter than I entered. At the exit, Ethan said, drinks? I said, not tonight. Maya smiled. Tomorrow? I nodded. Tomorrow. I walked into air that felt earned, knowing the win had a cost. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I carried quiet forward, learning victory can be heavy and healing still waits. I breathed once more, then stepped onward without looking back. I handed Laura my resignation. Effective today, I said. She blinked. You're leaving? I nodded. I am. Her lips pressed together. She didn't speak. I added, I'll finish pending work. She looked away. Silence stretched. Maya appeared. Are you sure? She asked. I said, yes, it's time. She hugged me tightly. I'll miss you, she whispered. I replied, I'll miss you too. She stepped back. Promise me you'll stay safe? I said, I always have. Her eyes glistened. Ethan shuffled near. I owe you an apology, he said. I raised an eyebrow. About? He said, everything I didn't say, every warning I didn't give. I replied, I survived. That's enough. He sighed. I'm proud of you. I smiled faintly. Laura remained in her office, silent. I caught her eyes as I walked past. They were sharp but distant. I said, goodbye, Laura. She didn't answer. My chest tightened, then loosened. I realized control was mine now, not hers. Daniel met me outside. You made the right call, he said. I asked, leaving feels strange. He replied, good, it should. Growth isn't comfortable. I nodded. I'm ready for what's next. He smiled. I found an opportunity. You'll thrive, I said. Thank you, truly. In the elevator, I texted Maya. Made it out. She replied instantly. Free. I smiled. The city outside looked different somehow, like I could breathe for the first time in months. At my new desk, Daniel's advice echoed. Patience, not vengeance, he said. I repeated, patience, not vengeance. Emails arrived, tasks piled, but I felt untouchable. I realized survival wasn't about defeating others. It was protecting myself. Boundaries mattered more than battles. Ethan called. First day? I said, yes, smooth so far. He asked, feeling okay? I laughed softly. Better than ever. He said, I'll drop by sometime. I said, don't get in trouble. He chuckled. Never. Maya came to see me off one last time. You've changed, she said. I replied, I needed to. She nodded. And Laura? I said, she's her own lesson. She laughed softly. You're stronger than you know, I said. Stronger than I thought. I thought of the nights I spent chasing approval, the fear of being small, the humiliation. I said aloud, no one can touch me now. Daniel's words returned. Strength isn't loud, it's quiet, controlled. I agreed. I typed my first report at the new job, steady hands, steady mind. Mark and Laura became memories I couldn't erase, but didn't need to. I whispered to myself, I survived. I am untouchable. At the window, city lights flickered. I said, this is mine. Deep breath. A smile lingered. Not triumphant, not gloating, just calm, unwavering. I was free. I was steady. I was ready. Maya waved from the street. I waved back. Ethan stayed behind. I waved again. Daniel clapped my shoulder. Go on, he said. I nodded. Walking out, I knew the truth. Survival wasn't winning battles. It was walking away strong, untouchable, and whole. I exhaled. The past didn't follow me. Only lessons, only clarity, only me. The elevator doors closed. My chest was lighter, my mind sharper, my life, my rules. I smiled quietly and stepped forward. I arrived at the new office early. First day, I whispered to myself. The desk was clean, untouched. I placed my bag down and straightened papers. Daniel peeked in. Ready? He asked. I said, more than ever. He nodded. Good. Start strong. I opened my laptop and smiled faintly. Emails arrived. I typed carefully, methodically, every line precise. I paused. No shortcuts, I said. Daniel smiled. Lesson learned? I said. The hard way. He chuckled. And alive. I laughed softly, remembering Laura's cold stare and Mark's threats. Alive indeed. Maya visited during lunch. You're calm, she said. I replied. Feels like I finally can be. She asked. No lingering fear? I said. Just awareness. She smiled. You survived without losing yourself. I said. Exactly. Ethan appeared later. I wanted to check on you, he said. I replied. I'm okay. He asked. You hate them? I shook my head. Hate doesn't help me. Learning does. He exhaled. You've grown, I said. I had to. I remembered the nights I spent doubting, replaying every moment with Laura. The hand that brushed mine, the words she whispered. I said quietly, I won't chase illusions anymore. Daniel passed by. Clarity suits you, he said. I nodded. Feels like breathing. The office phone rang. A legal clerk confirmed Mark's investigation, I said. Finally. Daniel smiled. Justice quietly served. I said. I didn't want vengeance. He said, you wanted life. I agreed. I opened a folder of notes, emails, and recordings. A sigh left me. All I needed was truth. I glanced out the window. The city was alive, people rushing, lights flickering. I whispered, life moves forward. So do I. The thought felt powerful, yet calm. No triumph, no celebration, just presence, just me. A colleague asked for help. I said, of course. My hands worked steadily. You're focused, they said. I smiled faintly. Experience teaches focus. They laughed. I felt a warm weight lift from my shoulders. Work felt like a tool, not a trap. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Laura's career ended. Another alert. Mark faced formal charges. I read them quietly. I didn't gloat. I said, justice arrived. Not mine, but truth's. That was enough. Daniel asked, reflecting? I said, yes. Betrayal changed me, but it didn't destroy me. He nodded. Most people break. I said, I chose differently. Maya texted, proud of you. I typed back, finally, proud of myself. I leaned back in my chair. Silence surrounded me. Peaceful, not empty, not numb. I said, I didn't get revenge. I got my life back. Daniel smiled, satisfied. Ethan called. Want to grab coffee later? I said, yes, let's talk about everything else. I glanced at my reflection in the monitor, a man who had walked through fire and lived. I choose myself, I whispered. My hands rested on the desk. No more fear. No more chasing illusions. Boundaries clear. Lessons learned. I was finally whole. The city lights outside flickered again. I felt steady, untouchable. I typed a final note for the morning report. Calm. Precise. Me. My phone buzzed again with mundane work messages. I smiled faintly. Life, I said aloud. Just life. I exhaled, leaned back, and let it sink in. I wasn't haunted by what happened. I wasn't defined by betrayal. I was free. I was myself. I had survived, learned, and grown. I finally chose myself, and that choice would carry me forever.